Guys, welcome to the First Responder Playbook. I'm going a little bit different direction tonight with you guys. My side passion in life, I love the paranormal, and I have Marianne, Rob, and Dave Rich with me with the UAP-PD, a paranormal group out of Arizona. And I want them to, I'm going to let them do the introduction and do themselves justice because I know I won't. But guys, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, Marianne Robb, I was a police officer in Arizona for 34 years. And one of my, I guess, hobbies, if you call it, was being part of an organization called MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network here in the Phoenix area. And I was a field investigator with them. So if any reports came in through Arizona, whether lights in the sky or whatever they might have seen, we'd go out, we'd do an interview, and if there was an investigation, great, fantastic, we'd go take care of that. Let me tell you a little bit about my background as a police officer, first of all, is that mostly I loved working patrol. That was my favorite. I spent, out of the 34 years, I would say at least a good 25 in patrol, because to me, that's where it is. That's where all the fun starts. I've worked as a crime prevention officer. I was a narcotics officer or detective, property crimes detective, and an arson detective through my time. But as you know, as a cop, we learn how to investigate, do great interviews, interrogations. So getting back a little bit, the organization MUFON, that's what Dave and I were doing, is we were using our background as police officers to assist the folks on MUFON doing a good, thorough investigation. So we were kind of doing that. And just, oh gosh, about 2.5 years ago, we were at a meeting and they were talking about the disclosure that's supposed to be coming, which I don't think we're ever going to see disclosure, but that's just my opinion. And how military pilots and commercial airline pilots are starting to talk about things that they've seen while they're up in the sky. And they're like, it's baby steps, but at least they're starting to talk. Then I was talking to Dave. I go, look, military's talking, but have you heard anything from law enforcement or first responders? No. And I was thinking, okay, well, why not? So get a hold of Dave, and I said, everybody else is talking. Why aren't law enforcement and first responders talking about these things? And Dave, tell us why they're not talking.
Well, give you a little bit of background on mine to catch up, and then I'll kind of explain that to you. So 25 years as a police officer, started in patrol, worked as a detective in our gang unit, then I was a homicide and sex crimes detective. And then I ended my career working with alien life forms. I was a high school SRO. So you can't get much more alien than that. So that's how I kind of got involved in MUFON. As one of the people that worked at the school was the assistant state director for Arizona. And that's how Marianne and I that same person was friends with her, worked with me. We kind of all got together and created a lesson plan for teaching people how to investigate. And so again, back to where Marianne's story was. I get this phone call out of the blue from her, and she's like, hey, cops are seeing stuff. Why aren't we talking? And I said, well, I can tell you exactly why we're not talking. In 2017, I was working as the school resource officer at one of the high schools. We ended up getting a 911 call from the front desk of the school. I had a supervisor tell me that I needed to investigate it, try and figure out what it was. Was it like a kid? It was on a Saturday, so there's no students there, nobody going on. So our big concern was, did somebody break into the school? Were they messing around with the phone lines, stuff like that? The call came in from the front desk of the school. Patrol officers were dispatched to it because there was a voice on the line. They make entries in a Knox box key. They search the entire building. They don't find anybody there. They do find the phone off the receiver, kind of laying on the countertop. And it was the open line to the dispatcher. So the patrol guy picks it up and talks to the dispatcher. So we know with 100% certainty this was the phone in question. They search everything. They don't find anything. I get involved in the investigation because, again, we want to make sure nobody broke into the school, was using the phone. I pulled the security footage from, this call came in just before noon I pulled the security footage from 6 o'clock in the morning all the way through. That phone is almost dead center of the screen where this is happening. And Brent, when that phone call came in, there was nobody on that phone. We took the audio and gave it to MUFON to see if they could analyze it, because then my thought process is, well, maybe it's like a computer-generated thing. Maybe somebody hacked the system. The dispatcher was quick to point out that doesn't explain how the phone got off the hook, though, and how the open line was there. So that's true. So I do this full-blown investigation. I check everything from the security footage, analyzing the audio, checking everything from the phone box outside to see if somebody broke in and tapped into the phone line, every possible lead that I could, because obviously I'm going to catch whoever did this, because there's clearly a logical explanation to this. I just need to figure out what it is. Then I get the results back from the phone, the video or the audio analysis. And the guy who analyzes it looks at me and goes, I don't know what you got, but this is not a human voice. And I'm like, excuse me? Because it clearly sounds like a woman speaking in a whispered voice, conversation tone between her and the dispatcher. Dispatcher, hey, 911, what's your emergency? Sounds like it says, I'm scared. She says, what was that? It says, I'm scared. She says, you're scared. And then it says, no. And then you literally hear the phone receiver get dropped onto the countertop. So the guy, when he tells me it's not a human voice, I'm looking around. There was nobody at this phone when the call came in. The officers, when they were doing a search, they went into the nurse's office, which is right next to the front desk, and they encountered something that neither of them could see, literally physically pushed them out of the way. And so the long story short is I'm left with this kind of like, I've ruled out every possible thing. I don't want to say it's a ghost, but I can't come up with any other explanation. And so this is why we don't talk about it. So I finally get this all done, and then I get that great call from upstairs. Hey, you need to go talk to this detective sergeant upstairs. So I walk into the room. He literally has the computer set up there with the security footage. He has the audio recording right there. Plays the audio recording, shows the video where we don't see anybody at him, looks at me and says, you expect me to believe this? And I'm looking at him like kind of confused, like, what are you talking about? He's like, you expect me to believe this? I think you're lying. I think you're making this up. I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull. And at the time, I was like kind of pissed, because I was decorated officer at the time, life-saving award, meritorious conduct, distinguished service, distinguished team citation, all these ribbons on my uniform. And this guy's accusing me of lying and making this up when he's got the video and the audio right there. And so basically he tells me to bury it and don't talk about it. What I did not know at this time, but I have since found out, is the 2 patrol officers that were there, they got called into a different office with a command staff member who also told them to bury it. And we walked away. Now, at the time, I had 6 years left in my career. I had a young wife and 2 young kids. And so like when you're called upstairs, you know, it's like you get called upstairs and they tell you don't talk about it, you don't talk about it.
Exactly.
So for 6 years, I kept my mouth shut, and it weighed on me, because every time I get called upstairs for something, is this the day? Is this the day that they're going to be like, you ran your mouth too much? Because I wasn't talking, but there were other people that were still commenting, because it got to be pretty known by a bunch of different people. And then on top of that, my wife was a teacher at the school district where this happened. So again, I'm like, if I run my mouth, if I say something, is that going to drag her? And is she going to come and tell me that she's now in trouble? So I keep my mouth shut. I don't say anything, because of the threat to my career. So when Marianne calls me and says, hey, why aren't police officers talking about this? I'm like, I'll tell you exactly why. Because it's a threat to our career. It's a threat to our credibility. It's a threat to just straight up the believability factor. There's so many people out there that don't believe that if you say it, you take a hit, and then you have to live with that. And then it's an uphill battle every time you're doing something. I mean, it can go so far as a defense attorney finds out that you're the cop that saw Bigfoot. What's he going to say when you're on there on the stand testifying over like a stolen vehicle or a burglary or some completely mundane thing? He's going to ask if you saw Bigfoot and hope that the 12 people that were too stupid to get out of jury duty that they think you're crazy.
Yep.
And so there's all these different stigmas that officers and first responders face about this. And so when I told her that, there was another person that was kind of there in the conversation, kind of listening in. And they were like, you know what? You guys should probably talk about this, because a lot of people are kind of the opinion that law enforcement and first responders, we're like all part of this giant global conspiracy to hide the truth. And we're going to bury everything so nobody knows it. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the very real threat to my career, because if I get fired, I'm not going to be able to get another job as a police officer, because they're going to ask, why'd you get fired? Because he saw a ghost. And they're going to be like, oh, yeah, I don't want that guy. And so we ended up creating this organization, UAP-PD, based off of that, because we were told, hey, you guys should really start talking and telling people about this, kind of clear it up. And so we created this organization for that very reason, because if it happened to me, we know it's happening to other people. We know it's happening enough to other people that we have, like, gosh, how many stories are we up to now?
We're up to about 70.
Probably about 70 different original stories that nobody has heard of before, from different first responders all over, not even just all over the country. We got one from New Zealand. We got some from England. These amazing stories from incredibly brave people who have dedicated themselves to protecting others, and were left in that kind of limbo where I was, where you're trying to do everything right. You see something and you experience something that you can't explain, and people are calling you out on it. And how do you defend yourself? Because you saw it. It was real. Like, maybe it wasn't a ghost, but it was strange, and you can't explain it. And it gets lumped into this category of you're nuts, you're crazy. And it's kind of sad, but we created this organization for that purpose, to give first responders somebody that they can call and talk to, that's not going to judge them, not going to think they're crazy, help them out. Because some people, Brett, like we have officers that'll come over, and when they walk in, you can see how tense they are. And as they tell the story, I usually break the ice with my story. I'll be the first one to jump on that grenade. Hey, this is what happened to me. And then it kind of lightens the mood a little bit. And then they start to tell us the story about what happened to them. And you can physically see, like, their shoulders finally droop. And you can see the stress come off of them when they actually say it. And so it's amazing in that respect. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to help these first responders out, trying to help our brothers and sisters out who have experienced something that they cannot explain, and they have nowhere to go. We're going to give them somewhere to go.
That's awesome. I agree with you in that it's one of those things that people sometimes will talk about it, but it's only in, like, around your buddies. It's not not where, like, a majority of the department can hear you. Definitely not where administration can hear you. And that's what I was telling Marianne when I talked to her, is like, I'm to the point in my career, I don't care. People think I'm crazy. I mean, it is what it is. But I know what I experienced, and I can't explain it. And I can't say that, I saw an alien, or I can't say that, I dealt with ghosts, but something that I really can't explain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the foundation of police work is, hey, we're here to investigate things and do it by the book and do it properly. And that's what you guys are here for, and that's what people need to realize is, even if it turns out to be something that you didn't really, it ended up not being anything. Okay, cool. We proved that, hey, this was not what you thought it was.
Yeah,
exactly.
And, that gives them peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't, you can say, hey, like, we don't know what that is. Yeah. And I think that you guys are doing an awesome job, because there are so many first responders that I know of that will say those things in kind of private, but they won't come out and say it, because they're, well, what might the defense attorney say, or what might my buddy on shift might say.
Exactly.
And there's got to be a way that we can slowly start changing that, because I think we're at a point in our in the world that we can realize that there's a lot of things out there we don't necessarily understand or know totally what they are.
Yeah.
And
and Yeah,
people way smarter than me are working on.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because, like Marianne and I have talked about this before. Like, they're like a lot of people ask us like, what is your end game? Like, what is the big thing you're trying to accomplish, other than just provide this safe place where officers can talk and be protected, not have to worry about their information getting out or anything like that. And it actually came from one of our stories where we were interviewing an officer on the reservation here about some encounters that he had. And when I told him what happened to me, he was just completely shocked that I would get called upstairs by a supervisor and basically accused of lying. And we kind of slowly pieced together the idea of they never had that problem on the res because their culture accepts those things as real. Star people, spirits, skinwalkers, cryptids, Bigfoot, stuff like that. It's so ingrained in their culture that the average person in their community is like, oh yeah, those exist. Yeah, that's no big. Yeah, I don't really like see them. They're like, it's like a payphone. Like I know payphones exist, but I haven't seen one in forever. But
Right.
it's like that thing where when you get off of the res and into the other communities and stuff like that, the cities, municipalities, they don't have that mindset. You're still looked at as crazy. So when it comes down to the whole, like, well, what is our end game? I'm not expecting us to be able to sway all of community. But if we can push that needle a little bit, make it so that people, instead of instinctively go, well, that guy's crazy, go, well, hey, they saw something. Maybe it's not paranormal. Maybe it's not what they think, but they still saw something. Maybe we should take the time to figure out what it is and not be judgmental. If we can just push that needle a little bit in that direction, maybe then our first responders can experience these things and not feel like, hey, I can't say anything. I got to keep it all quiet. I got to keep it all on down low. So I don't want to be seen as crazy. And I think the first step is just getting to that, where giving them an opportunity to talk in a safe environment. And then we take that information and maybe we end up running the story with other people. We do stage presentations. We do podcasts like this where we'll talk about the stories that they've seen, where these credible, highly trained individuals are seeing things that they can't explain. And we get that out there, and maybe in the process we can get a little bit more of the buy-in from the community, and then we can get that change.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you guys initially get involved with MUFON? Like, did y'all initially have like a sighting of your own, or
Actually, I started, my late husband was the one. He was into the UFOs. He read Van Doniken's book, Chariots of the Gods, back in the day. And he heard about MUFON. And there was a conference in Scottsdale, Arizona. And he asked me, back in 2014, he goes, can I go to this conference? I'm like, knock yourself out. Go get them. I was not into this UFOs, paranormal. Did I know that there's got to be other life exists in the universe? Of course. But I just never saw anything. So I'm like, you know what? You want to go to these conferences? Go for it. About 3-4 months later, he asked me if I'd go to a meeting with him, a MUFON meeting in Phoenix. Yeah, okay, I'll go. And I'll tell you right now, I was expecting tinfoil hats. I was expecting weird people. The speaker that they had that night was Kathleen Marden, which, if anybody out there, Betty and Barney Hill story, well, that was their niece. Kathleen's their niece. And here I am, I'm a cop, so I'm looking at body language. Is she making up stories? Is she lying to us? I'm going to watch what she says, how she says it. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to find out this is a made-up story. Well, I watched her for 2 hours talking, and there was no made-up story. Everything I saw was just, she wasn't being deceptive at all. And I was like, wow, okay, maybe there is something to this, because there were no tinfoil hats. There were actually a lot of people that were into science that were attending these meetings. So a little bit more and more and more, the end of 2014, if you heard of Travis Walton, Skyfire Summit up northern Arizona, got taken for 5 days. They had a big conference up north, and my husband and I were asked to house Stanton Friedman, Peter Robbins, and Richard Dolan. And I'm like, okay, who's that? both my husband and said it. Oh, yeah, we got yelled at. We were told who these guys are and don't ever ask that question again, which we never did. But that's how I got into it. And then, of course, became a member, became a field investigator. We teach the boot camps that we've had in the past, and little at a time. I move on now for, heck, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years now. But I have in my whole entire life, and I'm an avid fisherman and hunter, and I'm out patrol and everything else out under the sky, the big old sky. I have never to this day have encountered any type of UFO, any type of cryptid or a paranormal experience. It's all him.
I lost a bet. No, I'm just kidding. Basically, I was working, like I said, at the one school, and the state director was the assistant state director worked at the school. And believe it or not, the way that I actually got involved is I walked in, and I had heard on the radio, because I've never seen a UFO or anything like that either. I walked in and made a joke about the planet Nibiru, because I'd heard about it, and I was all like, "You believe this is like this planet that's supposedly exactly the other side of the sun that we can never see?" And so I walked in and made a joke about it, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm a member of MUFON," and I'm like, "What's a MUFON?" And so she kind of explains it to me. I was like, "Oh, okay." And at that point, I had already had my experience, so I was willing to take things with a little different grain than initially, because, like I said, I'd never seen a UFO, but I also had never seen a ghost before, and now I'm wondering about that. So I was willing to kind of like accept it a little bit. And so after I'd worked with her for a while, she ended up asking me about the idea of, hey, is there any chance you would be willing to help create a lesson plan to teach people how to conduct investigations? And then she told me, because I've been friends with Marianne like for 20 some odd years at this point, but I didn't know that she was actually involved in MUFON until Stacy told me, and I was like, really? I was like kind of shocked. And I was like, yeah. So we kind of got together and kind of mashed heads together. And with my experience in detectives, and I'm a basic and advanced forensic interviewer from working sex crimes and everything like that, we were able to kind of design like a real quick, like hour and a half long, real basic, like kind of things that you can look for when you're interviewing people, how to take notes, how to like read the room. We do a little bit of the body mechanics and stuff like that to look for signs of deception, but it's really more of like a basic, like how to take notes, how to do it safely, work as a team, and get some good information out there, and be not ask leading questions, and be open to letting them talk and get the story out and stuff like that, and don't interject. And so that's how kind of I got involved. And then through that, ended up becoming a field investigator, got involved in a number of investigations. Pretty much every investigation that I got involved in, we were able to 100% prove was not an alien spacecraft. I had everything from astronomical bodies that were a mistaken identity to like lights and stuff like that, like timed lights at a tennis court, all the way up to flat out hoaxes. Like a guy that basically taped a light behind a ceiling fan and then put the camera on the ground and filmed it and claimed that he was looking outside. And what he didn't know is that we could actually lighten the room with the ambient light, and we could see clear as day. He taped the light up to the ceiling. We could see the ceiling fan and everything like that. So that was basically how I got involved. And then that's why she called me about the whole, hey, why aren't they talking? And that's what kind of segued into MUFON, or into UAP-PD.
Awesome. So you guys get to a point and you guys branch out on your own, start UAP-PD. What necessitated the change? What made you guys go out on your own?
I can answer for what my what caused me to do it was MUFON is very, very specific to UFOs. And they don't really like to talk about anything other than UFOs, crafts in the sky, lights in the sky. My encounter had nothing to do with UFOs. A lot of the encounters that we're seeing have nothing to do with UFOs. We've got cryptids. We do have some UFO. but we've got cryptid, we've got paranormal, we've got just strange things that we can't explain. And so I think what caused us to go out on our own was that realization that first responders are our primary focus. It's not what they're seeing, it's who's seeing it. And so in that respect, we kind of came at it from a different angle where we have to go after what they're seeing, not specifically what they saw. So if it's a first responder who saw a ghost, we want to be there for them. If it's a first responder who saw Bigfoot, we want to be there for them. So because of that, we're like, well, we're not ruling out anybody. I don't care what the first responder saw. If they're a first responder, they saw something, I'm going to be there for them. And so because of that, it caused us to almost have to branch outside of UFOs, and which is great because I've always been more of a paranormal guy than a UFO guy anyways. That's the stuff that fascinates me, the ghosts, the demons, the demonic possession, stuff like that. That's where I really kind of like the venture.
And another thing is when we were field investigators with MUFON, we got a call in from, I believe it was a firefighter, that they were doing training back in March of 1997 with the Phoenix Lights. So supposedly they were doing
Five Symington.
There you go. You got to love the guy. Not. But it was a joint police fire, I believe it was a SWAT teams, and they were doing this joint training mission somewhere in Phoenix. And they encountered the Phoenix Lights. And there was, oh my gosh, maybe 15, 16 of them. So we got the report to contact this firefighter, and we contacted him, left a voicemail, and says, hey, this is us. And we also, I believe we even identified ourselves as we are law enforcement officers, please contact us back and tell us what's going on. Never heard anything back from them. So that tells us probably maybe this guy was like, hey, yeah, let me report it. This is cool. But then all the other guys found out that he did and says, you need to keep your mouth shut or we're all going to lose our job. Or we're all going to be going to either the IA or the shrink because we're a bunch of crazy folks. So he never contacted us back. And I really wish now we can find that guy and we can say, look, come talk to us. We are cops. We understand. It had nothing to do with MUFON. We're not going to make a report, but we want for him to call for, and this is just my opinion, but for this guy to call even MUFON, he wanted to get that story out. It sounded like it was bothering him. He didn't know where to go. He heard about MUFON. Hey, great. So he sends out that, he makes that initial call, and they probably all told him to shut up and don't talk about it. So I would love to be able to get hold of that guy and say, look, there is a safe zone. There is. I know, granted, it's been so many years ago, 25, 6, whatever years ago, but we are here to help you. And that's another reason why, because I guarantee whether it's MUFON, whether it's the International UFO Bureau, or whatever organization, if you're law enforcement, first responder, you see something you can't explain, there ain't no way that you're going to contact those agencies and say, oh yeah, let me tell you the report. Unless they're now retired and they can care less.
Yeah.
So again, that's another reason why we started what we're doing. We don't do a lot of investigations. The only time we will actually go out and do an investigation is if we get reports from, say, one specific location, like we have, that we've had 6 or 7 different stories of paranormal activity or cryptid activity in this one spot. We'd be like, let's go out and see what we can find in that area, which we did find something in this one area. But other than that, if these folks want to just tell us their stories, some remain anonymous, some be identified, we're not going to go out and do any kind of investigation. We're here to help you and to make them understand you are a great cop, you're a great firefighter, you're a great paramedic, that you're not crazy. This has happened to people, and that's what we want them to understand. We are the safe zone. They can give us a call.
That's awesome. in having that in mind, what kind of gold mine would that have been to be able to get that firefighter to talk? I mean, you're right, because for him to even make that initial call,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that had to have been,
Yeah.
bothering him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then just to
Um,
have like it's like most things when one person talks, they kind of look around and everybody's like, oh, but then after a few minutes, they're like, well, yeah, I kind of saw something too. And it's kind of like when you break that ice. So in a situation like that where we got like 15, 20 first responders, if we could get a couple of them to talk, then the others might be like, well, yeah, okay, they talked and nothing bad happened to them. Let's go talk. Well, let's go. And again, just to get those stories would be absolutely incredible.
Now, another thing is I've gone to groups of cops, going to a briefing. Well, what we do is we hand out each person a card because, as you know, cops, we're all type A personalities. We're great. We're fantastic. I'm not going to tell them about that paranormal thing that I had at this house or whatever, but they're going to keep quiet in a group. But you get them singly where they get home or they get in their patrol car and they go, they're going to give you a call. And they said, don't tell anybody, but I want to tell you about the situation that I had. And we don't tell anybody. But I think that's the way we would get stories, is being individuals, contacting us away from everybody else.
Yeah, because all of these events, whether you see it or not, it creates some sort of trauma, some sort of mental trauma. And as first responders, I mean, you know what it's like. We ain't nothing bothered us. We're going to take care of business. That's what we're there for. But secretly behind the scenes, you're like, wow, that was messed up. Like, I don't know what that was. That was messed up. Even things without the paranormal stuff. You go on some hot calls. You go on some deaths, some really bad like assaults or child things that something that affects a child. I don't care how tough you are. On a certain level on the inside, you're going to carry that, and you're going to have that little bit of trauma. But we always put up those walls. We go on to the next call, go take the next barking dog. But that's like kind of like why it works better. Like Marianne's saying, is you get them alone, and like deep down inside, they can admit to themselves they're having problems. It's hard to admit to other people. But when you start seeing other people that do the job or have done the job as you, and you start hearing about the stories that they've had, sometimes it starts to kind of be like, okay, maybe I can talk to this person. They're not going to think less of me. They're not going to think that I'm crazy or I'm out of my mind because they had something happen to them. So maybe it is safe to talk. And that's all we're trying to do, is get that safe feeling so that they can do it. Because that's, I hate to say it because it sounds so cliche, but that's the first step towards recovery. It's the first step towards getting that stress out of you, is you get the story out and realize I'm not alone. There's other people that have had stuff happen. I don't have to face this by myself. I have people that I can talk to and people that'll listen to me and not judge me. And that's that first step to really moving past it.
Absolutely. You guys said you found something on one of your visits. I got to hear about this.
This is your story.
Okay. So,
I was only the camera person, and I didn't see anything. But
okay, so there's a reservation out here in Arizona that is pretty well known, and there's a mission out on it, like a church mission that's out there, and it's in an area where it's like it's still Arizona. It's like the middle of the desert. Like you drive out to this place, it's like got a dirt road going past it. There's like a dirt parking area in front of it. And there's like no houses for like a half mile. Like it's in the middle of nowhere.
Sounds like rural Oklahoma.
Yeah, but it's like rural Arizona. So it's all dust and dirt. We interview a number of officers. I want to say we had 4 officers from this particular police agency. And each guy gave us like 2 stories. And of those 8 stories, like 4 of them all had to do with this one mission. And so we're like, okay, that's weird, and they were all different stories. It wasn't like the same event happening. It was, this guy had a story of these like red eyes that were seen in the back seat. This guy had a story of like a paranormal thing where they found the doors kicked open and something weird happened. This guy saw something run past the car that him and his ride along could not explain what it was. So it was like all these different things. So of course we hear these stories, and it's about an hour from not even an hour from here. And of course, somebody gets the brilliant idea of we should go out there and check it out. And we're like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. So there's two other people that we work with, friends of ours, Jesse and Glenn, a husband and wife. Jesse works in corrections. Glenn is a licensed hypnotherapist. She also kind of knows things, if you get my meaning. Like she sees stuff and knows things. So the four of us go out to this mission, and it's a Friday. It's like daylight still because, like usual, you want to do a scout, see what it looks like. So you go during the daytime so you can see what's going on, get a good read of the land and everything like that. And then we were going to kind of stay there until after dark and see if we saw anything or heard anything, because this is brilliant for us to do. So we go out there. We drive out there. We get out. Marianne and Gwen stay towards the front, kind of looking at the front of it. Jesse and I go walking around the back. We find a whole bunch of stuff. I come walking up and I go, hey, there's a lot of activity here. And everybody gets so excited. I'm like, nope, time out. What I mean by that is there's a whole bunch of broken bottles, and there's like a fire pit, and there's quad tracks. And so when I say activity, I mean there's like a lot of kids partying out here, fire pits, things like that. Not paranormal activity, let's clarify. There's just a lot of stuff going on. So we don't really get any real feeling or anything like that. Gwen gets some things that she kind of mentions. But we basically wait there for a good couple of hours, wait until the sun goes down. And it's real quiet there because it's real far from like the main road. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And it gets dark, and there's like one light behind the mission that's like, because the mission it's made up of like the main church building, and then there's like an annex building that's right next to it that's really small. And then there's like a covered patio behind the annex building that's like attached to it. And the only light is on that back patio. So you have this one little area of light. The entire thing is surrounded by a fence so nobody gets there. So we're sitting there and nothing happens. We're like, okay, well, we're not seeing anything. We're not hearing anything. Nobody's getting any weird feelings. It's now been a couple of hours. It's now dark. We're like, okay, well, yeah, let's get going. So we had a cooler full of drinks and stuff like that, like water, Gatorade, stuff like that. So I take the cooler and I put it in the bed of my pickup. And it's funny because like we're in the middle of nowhere, but as we're talking, we're all kind of still whispering. It's funny. Like there's nobody there, but we're still kind of whispering back and forth. But we're all standing at the back of the truck, and there's the dirt road that goes past the mission. So I put the cooler in the back of the truck, and I slammed the tailgate shut. And the only way I can describe it is I slammed the tailgate shut, and it felt like a bolt of electricity shot up my back. And something was like, you need to turn around. And so I spin around and I look down this dirt road past the mission, and I see something come walking out from behind the mission. And the only way I can describe it is it was probably about 6.5 to 7 feet tall. It was tan, like the perfectly colored to the background, where if it was daylight, it would be almost like perfectly camouflaged to the back. It didn't have hair on its body, but it had long, shaggy hair hanging from its head. And it kind of like was like stumbling, walking out into the road. And it stops in the middle of the road, and it kind of starts wobbling back and forth, like back and forth. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, what the hell? Gwen looks at me, and she's like, oh, my God. And I'm like, are you seeing this? And she's like, yeah. Meanwhile, Jesse's on the other side of Gwen, and Marianne is on the other side of me, and they can't see anything. But the two of us are looking at this going, what the hell is that? And then a second thing that I can only describe as being crawling on all fours. It looked like a weird kind of humanoid sort of thing, and it was like black on black. It was pitch black. You couldn't tell what it was. It comes crawling out into the middle of the road between us, and it's like standing between us and this thing that's kind of wobbling back and forth. And then it charges forward about like 3-4 steps to the point where I literally sweep my coat aside and I grab my gun. And I'm like, literally stop. Gwen's like, we need to go. I'm like, yeah, we need to go. So everybody walks back to the truck. Like I'm backing up, like kind of looking at it. And then I look back at the truck to see where the door is, and I look back and they're gone. And I'm like, okay, time to leave. So we jump in the truck and we take off. And we drive all the way down like a half mile, almost a mile to this Chevron, which became a joke because everybody that had an experience that they told us, they all said they got out of there and got to the Chevron and stopped at the Chevron. After we see this thing, we beat feet to the Chevron and we stop at the Chevron. As I'm getting out of the Chevron, I'm like, now I understand why everybody runs to the Chevron. Because it's the first place with light and people.
Well lit.
Yes. So we grabbed some drinks. Now, the entire time that I'm driving away, I'm like, I couldn't have really seen that. No, there's no way. So we decide we're going to stop and get something to eat. So we drive back to our side of town and we stop at the Cracker Barrel, free plug for the Cracker Barrel. By the time we get to the Cracker Barrel, I have completely convinced myself that I didn't see anything and that this was just, I don't know, crazy, trick of the light, something like that. I don't know what it was, but it's clearly wasn't what I saw. I must be losing my mind. I'm crazy. So we're sitting there at the dinner, and Jesse and Glenn are there, Marianne sitting next to me, and I'm telling them, I don't know, it's crazy. We must not have seen anything. Meanwhile, this one's monkeying around with the video camera that she was playing with while we were there.
Well, that's it. I was filming this whole time that we were at the mission. I was filming all over the place, and I wasn't expecting to see anything, so I'm kind of doing this. But I was filming when they said they were looking down this road. I had my camera on there. I couldn't see anything. It was dark, but I had that camera and it was recording down that road.
So yeah, so she hands me the camera and says, "What's this?" And I look on the video and clear as day, you can see something. It does not look like what I saw, but it looks like a giant humanoid like shimmer or blur that literally walks out from behind exactly like it was, stops in the middle of the road, and you can literally see this thing kind of wobbling back and forth in the road. And then she pans off before the second thing comes out. But we took that video and sent it to, I don't know if you guys know Mark D'Antonio. Mark D'Antonio, very well-known video and photograph analysis guy. He works with MUFON, works with the U.S. government. He is like pretty much up here with, if you have anything, you send it to him, he's going to analyze it. And if it's garbage, he is going to flat out tell you it's garbage. And he will tell you, this is what it is. This is an artifact. This is a trick of the light. This is this. This is that. We sent him that video, and he came back to us and said, I don't know what you got, but it looks humanoid. It walks into the road, and it's moving back and forth. And he's like, this is not a trick of the light. This is not an artifact. This is not a hoax. He's like, I don't know what you have. So that kind of sealed it for us. We were like, okay, we really caught something here. And so then, I don't know if you've heard of John Dover and Stan Milford, the Navajo Rangers. Okay, out here.
I've heard of the Navajo Rangers. I've not heard. Okay. I wasn't familiar with their actual names.
Yeah, John. I've heard of the Navajo Rangers. So being in Arizona,
Unsolved Mysteries.
Yes,
yeah,
those guys.
Yep.
Being in Arizona, we are very good friends with them.
Okay.
John comes down whenever John and Stan come down to the valley. They actually stay at Marianne's house. That's their base of operation. So John's down for we just have like a party and stuff like that. This is a couple months after we had this encounter, and it happened out on the res. And so I'm sitting there with John, and John is like my number one source for anything paranormal that's on the res. He and I talk about it, and it's great because to have somebody that's that knowledgeable who trusts you with information, it's crazy. So I'm looking at him, I'm like, hey, John, we got something. And he's like, what? And so I kind of explained the whole thing to him. I'm like, I don't know what it is, but Mark looked at it. He says there's something there. We don't know what it is. This is what I saw. And John's like, I can tell you exactly what it is. And I stop and I'm looking at him like, what? And so he proceeds to tell me that his belief is that it was a skinwalker. And the reason he says that it was two skinwalkers is he says that skinwalkers, when they change for about 10 or 15 minutes, their eyesight is not good because they're going from seeing infrared to seeing normal. So he's like, what basically happened is you guys were quiet. It's walking out. You slam the tailgate shut. That was the first time it heard something. So it turns and looks, and it's wobbling back and forth because it's trying to see what made that noise. The second one, he said they'll transform at separate times. One's covering the other one's back. And so it ran around because it could see what we are. That's why it charged forward, saw me reach for my gun, and it stopped because its job is to protect its friend. And so then we beat feet out of there. And I'm like, wow, that's like unbelievable. But again, every time I'm sitting here thinking it's unbelievable, then I come back to this video and I'm like, what the heck is this in the video? And so that is we learned a valuable lesson about going out and checking things.
That's such an awesome story, and I was kind of wondering if you were going to go and tell me if you thought it was skinwalkers, just because that's a big Native American tradition, especially in the American Southwest.
Mhm.
But I was also wondering, people say Bigfoot sometimes, cloaks itself.
Mhm.
And are you familiar with what Sasquatch Chronicles is?
No, actually, I'm not.
He's a pretty big podcaster, and it's a great show, and he has a lot of first responder themed episodes too.
Oh, nice.
But he is in some of his episodes, he's talked about Bigfoot spider crawling.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And,
Yeah, that would be how I would describe that second one. Is because it was kind of like crawling like on the ground, almost like in a horror movie, how you see him crawling up walls and stuff like that. It was crawling like that.
Yeah, and he's talked about there's several people that's seen what they thought were Bigfoot spider crawling. And when you first described it, that's what popped in my mind was, I've heard this before. So you might reach out to him. He's on YouTube and all the streaming platforms.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure he's got a little bit more information than I do on that. But man, when you told me that, I was like, oh my gosh, I've heard this before. But that's such an awesome story.
Good for confirmation. I'm not crazy.
Yeah. And I told Marianne this story. When I was a new officer, they would at a small municipal agency, they would kind of have us cover dispatch at night.
Mhm.
And if a dispatcher was sick, and I'll never forget, I was the only one in there. It was summertime. We're a small town. You know what a Sally Port is.
Yep.
And so we had the Sally Port door open, just because officers would pull up and walk in. That way we didn't have to buzz them in. And I'm watching TV. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. And the next thing I know, a big wooden door just slams shut. And of course, I about fall out of my chair. I'm like half awake already. And I reach for my gun. I'm looking at the cameras like, hey, did somebody sneak in here? Somebody playing a joke on me? And we had a very small municipal jail. It had 3 people that was built in the early 1900s. So it still had the old school, like lock and key, big heavy metal door. And so I go in there, and this door that's a big heavy wooden door that goes out of the booking area into like a little dispatcher's office. I open it up, and there's a big clipboard that is just laying in the floor that was on a big heavy nail. And there's not any way that like it could have just like fell off or was knocked off by the air conditioner. And I went back and I pulled the footage, and you see the door slamming shut and you see the clipboard go flying, but there's definitely like nobody in there. And there wasn't anybody in the police. I called one of my partners up there, and we cleared the whole building. So I was like, man, first I thought they were playing a joke on me. They snuck up and, oh, you're dozing off or something. We're gonna scare you.
Yeah.
But then I was like, man, maybe somebody broke into here. They're trying to steal something or something. And I could never really explain what happened. I don't. I don't feel like it was anything that could have just happened by an air conditioner, like blowing the door closed or anything like that. And to this day, I kind of like you with that. You're like, man, I don't know what happened, or I don't know what I saw. And I'm like, I feel like I know what I saw, but
Yeah.
I can't say, oh my God, that was a ghost.
It's hard to say, isn't it? It's hard to say.
So many bad things happen, at those type of things, and who knows, there might be residual haunting there. I don't know, but I love how you're just like, yeah, I don't know what I saw. I saw something, don't know what it was.
Yeah. And that's one of the things we like to do is we never try and label it when officers are telling us it. We'll ask them, hey, what do you think it is? If you don't know, you don't have to know. We're not going to like say, oh, well, I think it's this. It's what you believe it is. And maybe we'll do some research. Maybe we'll find something out together. But a lot of times I think of these things and it's like, I use this example during our stage presentations and stuff like that. Like if you took a cell phone and went back 100 years ago and showed that cell phone to somebody, they're going to look at it like it's magic. And then if you take some sort of piece of technology from back then that we would look at as being completely archaic and go 100 years further back, those people are going to look at both of those pieces of technology the same, that they're magic, even though we look at one as being archaic and the other one as being completely mundane. A lot of the stuff that we experience, I'm hesitant to label because how do we know it's not something that 50 to 100 years from now we're going to know like, oh, it's this, and it was nothing after all. We don't know, but right now it's unknown, and I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Mhm.
I don't want to tie you guys up all night, so I got a couple more questions.
Mhm.
What is your absolute favorite law enforcement paranormal story? I know mine. Mine is Lonnie Zamora, the New Mexico State police officer that saw the UFO. It was the 50s or 60s time frame. That was like one of the first. I remember like first responder stories I remember hearing, and
Mhm.
so that one's always stuck out to me. If you two had to choose one of your favorite, like each, what would it be?
Mine would be the Val Johnson, Minnesota,
I'm not
because
familiar with that one.
okay, Warren, Minnesota. I don't have I want to say in the 70s, I believe, 1970s, approximate. He was on patrol, middle of the night. He was on the highway, and he looks off to his left, and he sees this big white, looks like a light. He wasn't sure. Does it have
1970, August 27th, 1979. Guess what I found?
That's awesome.
But he sees this light just off the roadway. So he's thinking, was it a plane crash? Was it a car crash? He had no clue what was going on. So he turns down the other highway and he's going down. And as he's approaching, all of a sudden, this big white light crashes through his windshield and hits him in the chest. And he called it like a 200-pound pillow hitting him in the chest, knocks him out. He kind of coasts to the side of the road. He's out for, a few minutes. He gets on the radio, and I have the radio dispatcher. He says, I don't know what happened. Something hit my window or hit something in my vehicle. So first responders get there. They get him checked out. They send him to the hospital. Well, at the hospital, they said that both of his eyes had what they call arc welder type burns, both of his eyes. And both his upper and lower jaw, were actually cracked at the gum line. So something hit him. They had the Motorola, or at that time GM or Motorola, went out and they checked the whole area and they checked the vehicle, and they're like, I have no idea what hit this car. And they called it, as they said, the technical terms was a thing hit his car. That's all they could explain. Ford went out. They can't explain it. What was interesting is it might be there today. His car is actually at the Historical Museum, I think in Warren, Minnesota.
Yeah, Warren, Minnesota.
But
Marshall County.
And what was interesting about this car, when you look at it, the damage to the car goes on the driver's side. It goes the headlights. It dents the hood. Then it hits the windshield, goes up and hits the light bar, then goes straight back and hits two antennas, bends the antennas on the back. Now, if it's a rock, it's a bird, it's anything, it's going to ping off. As soon as it hits the front bumper, it's going to ping. It's going to go anywhere. This thing went up and over him, nowhere else. There's no other damage. There's people came out to interview him, his story never changed. It even said the chief of police believed what happened to him, but nobody could actually answer what in the world that light was that went and hit him and went up and over his car. So first of all, I want to go to Warren County, Minnesota, or Marshall County, Minnesota. I want to see that car myself. But to me, that was one of the really cool stories that I've researched.
I love that. I've never heard of that one. I'm definitely gonna do my research on that. I love that.
For me, it's gonna be, I'm gonna use the cheap cop out. My favorite paranormal story involving a police officer was the one that started UAP-PD, and it was my story because that irrefutable proof of something. And like we already talked about that, so I won't take up any more of your time. But yeah, I still have the audio recording. I still have the video surveillance that I kept, and it made me realize that was the first time I really realized that there's stuff in this world that we can't explain, and more importantly, other people are seeing it, and it's it's our origin story. And I hate to say this, and it sounds goofy, but I'm having the time of my life. I spent 25 years as a cop, helping people, and then I did a job after I retired that I did not like. For the first time I can remember working on this project and seeing these people, I truly feel like I'm helping again.
Exactly.
And so without that story and without the horror that I went through for 6 years after seeing it, we wouldn't be here. And so to me, that's my favorite story because it's what got us to here.
I love it. I love it. If anybody wants to I know you guys have your own show and then your website and everything. Tell everybody where they can find you guys and how to get a hold of you and how they can listen to your show.
Okay. Well, we don't have a show. Unfortunately, we don't have a show. We got a project working, but has nothing to do with any kind of radio show, podcast, because all we're doing, like I says, is we want to get the officers, first responders to feel comfortable coming to us. Not, oh, they have a show, so as soon as we tell them, they're going to broadcast it on a podcast. So we don't want to do that. We haven't, we don't have a show, but they can contact us at UAP-PD.com. Again, you got to put that little dash. So it's UAP-PD.com. We also have a Facebook page, UAP-PD. So please contact us. Either way, on our website, there is at the bottom, it says contact us. All you do is you can put your name and write us a message, and I get that through our email, and I'll get right back to you guys. And I'd love to talk to you on the phone, but I know there's law enforcement, first responders are like, who are these two people? Are we really real? Do we really have, okay, wait a minute, badge? Are we really cops or retired cops? If someone doesn't feel comfortable talking to us over the phone, I would have no problem getting on the next plane and head to whatever state you're in, driving, if you're in Arizona, wherever. I will come to you and talk to you in person, get to know you, and you get to know who I am. I am, a real person. I want them to feel comfortable. I've had that up in Kayenta, Arizona. We had a case. The gal said, I'm not going to tell you over the phone, but I will tell you the story in person. Next day, I was headed up to Kayenta, which is on the Navajo reservation up north. And it was an amazing story. And she showed me everywhere this occurred. So please contact us. Dave knows the stress that you're under. And we want to have you release that stress. You don't need, as a cop, as you all know, and first responders, we already have enough stress every day. Yeah. You don't need the added stress. And that's what we're here for.
UAP-PD. Otherwise, you end up with the University of Arizona Police Department. They aren't going to help you the way we will. So remember the dash.
That's awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. It was my pleasure, and you guys are welcome back here anytime.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been great.
Absolutely. You guys have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks.